we're in Tunisia and there's like drone attacks on 2 of the main ships, and I'm like, okay, this has gone from a kind of a jolly at sea where I'm like washing up liquid to try and do some exercises and just trying to ring home to my family, and the first night that there were drone attacks, I kind of just had a rude awakening. In my opinion, people aren't making enough of this. That's why the support for the war in America, I think, is really low as well, because they're like, okay, this is the latest thing you're telling us, you know, we must do this because this and this. You're not clear about what your reasons for going in there are. I think there's a kind of a fatigue with the leaders of the free world because international law has been destroyed, in my opinion, forever by Israel. An Israeli Zionist defend and articulate some of the things that we've all seen over the last 2.5 years, because they don't ever really do that. They usually just deflect and get into something else, and they'd say Hamas, they say all Muslims are evil. The divide and conquer that exists in the Arab Muslim world, that existed and still exists in Ireland, is exactly what empire wants, and it's exactly what the US and Britain and Israel wants more than anything now, for us all to stay divided.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my dear brothers, sisters, friends, and the foes out there, and welcome to another episode of the Blood Brothers podcast with your host, Dilly Hussain. Before I introduce today's guest, I want to remind all the avid podcast listeners that you can find this show and all 4 seasons on all the major audio platforms. And if you're tuning in via YouTube, do not be cheeky. Do remember to click subscribe to the 5 Pillars YouTube channel. Today's guest is returning for his second appearance after 2 years. We last sat down in May 2024. He's one of my favourite stand-ups and sketches, especially from the pro-Palestine camp. He is the renowned, the one and only dear brother and friend and comrade, Tadgh Hickey.
Good to see you, brother.
Salam, how's things?
You too, man. And look, nothing's really happened, so
a lot's happened.
I don't know what's to talk about.
Okay, well, May 2024, we sat down. The genocide was in full swing.
Yeah.
I think momentum was beginning to go against the Israeli narrative, the Zionist narrative. But here we are 2.5 years later, or 2 years later nearly, at least 80,000 killed, Gaza entirely flattened, a war with Iran entering its 4th week, Assad falling in Syria, a lot of the leadership from Hamas and Hezbollah taken out.
Yeah.
So much has happened. You've been on the Sumud Flotilla, so you tell me where you want to start, mate.
Well, when you put it like that, it sounds like the Israelis got a lot of their dreams, their hopes and dreams came true, particularly war with Iran. Like if you would have said 2 years ago that where we would be now is Israel is on its latest war and its biggest dream, Netanyahu's 30-40 year ambition, has come true, it sounds like they've won the day, and that those of us who've been protesting and doing what we can for the pro-Palestine cause have lost. But actually, weirdly, I'm in a positive enough place in spite of all the slaughter that's going on, because the big news, I think, is that particularly on the right in the US, support for Israel is falling apart. And there's, you know, we all dream of an end of the Zionist entity. Let's be honest, it's not going to happen without the US, you know, either collapsing itself or it's certainly its support of Zionism collapsing. So I feel like they've overplayed their hand. I mean, it sounds weird to be positive about it when they've displaced millions of people all over the region. They continue slaughtering children. They continue committing war crimes with little or no pushback from the West. But actually, I do believe it's gone from a hope to a belief. I don't know how you feel. I do feel like their days are numbered. I don't believe you can be this depraved and twisted and just, I mean, I experienced a little bit of myself in one of their prison cells. All they know is violence. All they know is escalation. I don't think you can be like that for too long. No, usually that's where empires fall apart.
No, it's not sustainable.
No.
And generally as Muslims and Palestinians would probably say the same, is that we remain optimistic forever.
Yeah.
Victory will be ours. Justice will prevail. And the camp of truth will win.
Yeah.
And the Zionist entity is anything but any of that aforementioned. But in terms of the momentum in America within the right, and just I'm going to mention a few names, not subscribing to all of their views or anything like that. Your Tucker Carlsons, your Nick Fuentes, your Candace Owens, your Marjorie Greene Taylor, your Thomas Massey's, your Megyn Kelly even now. Loud voices, right? How come we're not seeing none of that towards this side of the Atlantic?
That is a very interesting question. I don't know exactly what, I mean, some of those people that you mentioned, I don't agree with all their views either.
Of course.
But they have journalistic integrity. Like I look at someone like Tucker Carlson and I watch some of his shows, and to be honest, I'm partly laughing at the fact that I'm now watching this guy's show. Like some of the adverts that he does, usually for guns and stuff, I'm kind of going, how have we got here? But what I admire about him is that he has a viewpoint, he has an integrity, and he has a relentlessness to pursue the truth. I just don't think we get that level of journalism or political personalities on this side of the water. That we're just a little bit more cowardly, I think. Sadly, I think the Americans, some of them, they value American foreign policy and they have a faith and a belief in their own country and its destiny, so much so that some of them are comfortable with kind of going down the road of, well, what's the best thing for the US? Is it to be tethered to Israel or not? I mean, even Park, Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens and these people, for a moment, like I would argue someone like John Mearsheimer did it like 20 years ago, because he's a realist in terms of political analysis, and he was just saying from a realist perspective it makes no sense that the US is tethered to Israel, and he was kind of completely slammed as an anti-Semite 20 years ago. And now here we are a couple of decades later and everyone is interviewing John Mearsheimer kind of going, how did you know this? So, I mean, you raise a good question. I don't know. I mean, in Ireland, we probably don't have... Zionism is not even a thing in Ireland. I mean, people need to understand that. We don't really support we don't have any Zionists. I can't really... Maybe we can think of one or two people, but what we really support is business interests in Ireland. And so that it's the US that has Ireland in a kind of a bind. We need to be careful that we don't annoy the US too much, because then we'll lose big pharma and big tech, they underpin the Irish economy. So much so that we have a leader in Ireland who's on record as saying that what's going on in Gaza is a genocide, but he still went to the White House to give Donald Trump a bowl of shamrock because he's so cowardly and he's so scared that we're going to lose our business. And nobody in the Irish journalism in terms of the mainstream have asked him the question, well, if you believe it's a genocide, how can you go and have drinky poos with the guy who's funded and is the co-architect of that genocide? There's no pushback, I don't think, in this part of the world as much. So I admire the Americans, even though some of them, as you say, I disagree with their views on most things, but I really respect people with journalistic integrity, irrespective of what their views are.
Can you do any type of diplomacy or politics with Trump without having to blow hot air up his backside and dance and prance for him?
Well, I'm no expert, but I listen to people like Mearsheimer and others who say Trump is a bully. He's like a classic bully. He seems like the kind of guy in school that, you know, his dad has money and he's got stuff, so sometimes you kind of suck up to him and you go to his place because you can play the best computer games or whatnot. Yeah. But like, he's witless and he's not interesting and he's not funny. You have to laugh at his stupid jokes. Like that's who Trump is, and that's who he continues to be. I mean, I remember school being a place where you would stand up to those guys if you're going to get their respect. You don't suck up to them because then they don't respect you. And like, who are the people who haven't really sucked up to him? Like Putin. And he clearly has this affinity with Russia. He respects Putin because he's another strong man. I think anybody who stands up to him, he seems to have a begrudging respect for. And it's the likes of Starmer and whatnot, and our own leader in Ireland, and many European leaders. Like that lad from NATO, Mark Rutte, is just like, I mean, he's just a cartoon character. In fact, I tried to impersonate him at one point and I just gave up because I was like, there's nothing I can add to the parody he's doing of himself. But like, Trump doesn't respect those people. He respects somebody who stands up to them, you know. And actually, to be fair, Iran, obviously we'll get onto it. I don't know if you noticed, but there's a begrudging respect for Iran is coming in with his kind of nonsensical tweets.
Well, it's coming out recently, isn't it? He was on camera by saying that they surprised us by attacking the Arab neighbours with great strength and great power. So, and he has previously said that about the Taliban as well. Great fighters, great warriors. So yeah, I mean, begrudgingly, he seems to be someone who respects strength and force. He's also someone who, like a school playground bully, is quite temperamental, and major foreign policy decisions are being made based on one man's temperament. So that's quite worrying. Tell me about the flotilla. Your decision to go, how it was, and then how you end up spending time in an Israeli prison. Tell me, recap some of that for me.
I'll try and give you the succinct version. Like, so the decision to go was, I mean, I'm actually trying to write about it at the moment and kind of seeing, can I turn it into something, because there was a lot of funny things happened during the experience, but it was a painful decision because, as you know, like, you've got young kids, and it was a family decision actually for me to go. And my partner Claire slightly perturbed and peeved by people who say, "Oh, well done for letting him go," as if I'm a kind of a Jack Russell that you let kind of run around the garden or whatever. But it was a family decision where, like, she's also pro-Palestine, she's pro-humanity, she hates to see kids being slaughtered. And she had a lovely, there was an event in Cork recently for some of the people who were on the flotilla, and she's very shy and retiring, and she's the opposite of me, but she stood up at the event and she kind of said, her voice was a bit shaky, but she said, you know, someone's dad or someone's partner has to go and do things like this, so why not mine? And I just thought that was lovely, because that's the decision yeah, you know, and I wouldn't have been able to go without her, and you know, she supports me in everything, but it is a family decision, and I think it's important to kind of say that. But yeah, so it was painful leaving the kids, but I also felt like I'd kind of ran my mouth off online about people taking extra actions and stuff. So I painted myself into a corner where when I was asked to go, I felt like if I didn't go, it felt like I should go, if that makes sense. You know, like I have my own faith, as you know, whatever. And I just felt like this is my opportunity to do something a little bit more tangible, that it has a little bit more chance at kind of really raising meaningful awareness and trying to, you know, enact political change. So I decided to go. I didn't know what I was signing up for. I've never really been on a boat before. I'm hanging out with people that I didn't hang out with before. Sleeping arrangements are a bit tricky. You know, it's totally out of my comfort zone. But again, just felt like something that I should do because I might be useful on it.
Have you been on the seas before?
Not really. Like, no. My dad is no longer with us, but he was a keen fisherman. So like I just got on the boat and I didn't feel that sick. And I was kind of going, maybe there's something in the genes here. I enjoyed it straight away. And other people were just getting sick around me. And I liked that then as well, because I like being like, you know, I'm the tough guy. Yeah. So I was kind of like helping out like with boat duty and all that kind of stuff. And then I suppose there's a few days into it where like we're in Tunisia and there's like drone attacks on two of the main ships. Yep. And I'm like, okay, this has gone from a kind of a jolly at sea where I'm like lifting washing up liquid to try and do some exercises and just trying to ring home to my family. And the first night that there were drone attacks, I kind of just had a rude awakening where I realised, oh my God, this is actually a real thing, and we're up against this army that has enjoyed so much impunity. Yep. I don't know what they're going to do. And I got one really good mate, well, I got several good mates from Gaza, but I got one really good mate in Cork from Gaza. And before I left, he actually said, I don't think you should go. And then I had him in my mind, because he was like, I see what you're trying to do and thank you for the support, but who's going to look after your kids if you don't come home? And I felt he was almost being a bit melodramatic before I got out there. And then you have like drone attacks overhead, and there was another night where like 11 or 12 of our boats were struck. And there was another one of the activists said to me, you know, like nobody is coming to help. Nobody's coming to help us now. We are on our own. Because you kind of imagine if you're just bringing humanitarian aid to this besieged population, some sort of authority will step in and say, okay, look, stop bombing them. Like, you know, let them try and send, you know, deliver their aid. But actually no one steps in. That's the level of impunity that Israel and the US enjoys. So that was scary. And then I suppose getting to prison, at that point I felt like whatever it is I was supposed to do, I'd done it. I was glad that I hadn't been killed or injured, because it was a bit hairy at times. And I kind of felt like when we got to prison that it was going to be over at that point, that they were going to, I don't know what I was imagining. I just thought, look, we're activists, we're not criminals. They'd give us a telling off, maybe show us some atrocity propaganda and send us off home. But actually it was four or 5 days of pretty, you know, I would call it torture with an asterisk, like saying, you know, I'm aware that it's not what Palestinians receive, but no medical aid, no access to medicine, no contact with the outside world.
Any beats?
No lawyer. The darker the colour of your skin, the more likely you are to get a beating.
Okay.
Because I was white, I got away. Even though the Irish were treated quite bad as well, we're pretty low down the level, but we're not like Palestinians.
Lower whites, but light enough to not get the beats. Okay.
Exactly. Well, that's how the British used to originally kind of
put the Irish.
Put us. Yeah, we were quite low down, like, you know. But I was shocked at how they treated us, in spite of the passports that we have. Like, they strike me as people who are just completely drunk on their own farts at this point. Like, I mean, even the Americans, I thought the Americans were going to get special treatment. The Americans got the worst treatment. We were all gone. We had been let out in 3 or 4 days, and the Americans were still there. There was a couple of American Jewish guys, and they tried to make an example of them. You know, they were like particularly horrific towards Greta Thunberg, who's just
legend,
the most extraordinary human being.
Top girl.
I'll give you one quick Greta story. Actually, when we were being processed at Ashdod, I could feel her behind me. She'd come in, and you know she's coming because there's always fanfare around her when the Israelis are there, and they have like an Israel flag next to her. One guy's asking her to respect the flag, and then she like almost touched it, and this other guy starts shouting at her, and I think like physically restraining her. They're just bullies, like they're just complete bullies. And I looked over. If you raised your head when we were being processed, your head would be slammed back down on the ground because, you know, they didn't want you to show any solidarity with anyone else. And I just wanted to show Greta a bit of solidarity because she'd been on the same boat as me for about 10 days. We'd got on really well. We made some comedy sketches.
How was Greta?
Oh, man. She's like, not only is she like just like really sound out, she started like cleaning toilets as soon as she came on the boat. She didn't want any special attention whatsoever, but she's also just really funny and really creative. So we kind of like devised a few comedy sketches while she was on board, just really funny and really down to earth. But I put my head back just to acknowledge her, see if she's okay, and took the risk, like, you know, because obviously their heads are getting slammed back down, and she just looked at me and she just laughed. And her laugh was like, I've been through this before, whereas I hadn't. So she was actually offering me a bit of solidarity, and it was kind of like, these people are vile, these people are sadistic, but they're actually quite ridiculous as well. It's going to be okay. And that's exactly kind of how it went. So yeah.
What would you say to the critics of Greta who are like, this is all theatrics and PR, and she knows very well she's not going to be tortured, she's not going to be treated badly, she's going to get her photos, and they'll send her back in one piece. It's just privilege activism.
Well, first of all, she was mistreated. First of all, she's going into a situation where, as I say, these soldiers and these prison officers have gotten away with literally murder for the last 2+ years. She's their number one target. When they come on the boat that she's on, they have a special videographer to record every single thing that she does. Every muscle that moves on her face is recorded because they're trying to get a moment where she smiles so that they can say, look how well we treated her. And they send it around the world, you know, as they do with their kind of propaganda. So she is fearless because she knows she's actually going to get special attention when she goes on these missions. And secondly, I think the personification of the kind of thing you're talking about is Piers Morgan. Piers Morgan has for a long time tried to kind of traduce her as somebody who's narcissistic and is just interested in media attention. But actually that is the great projection of projections, I think, because that's what he's doing. That's where he's at, you know? Like, I think what really challenges people about Greta is they don't understand why a young person would kind of dedicate their life to trying to make the world a little bit better. And she does it not for any angle. And you'll know this if you spend more than like 10 seconds with her. She does it just because she cares. And I think that's very challenging to the likes of Piers Morgan, because if you accept that there are people out there that just do stuff because they care, then you have to come to the conclusion, oh dear, I'm not one of those people at all. Like, I have to have the motivation to do stuff because it's going to enhance my career or my pay packet. And she's just not one of those. So she just blows their minds. I kind of get it having met her. Whereas before I was just like, why are you shouting at this, what used to be very recently a child?
Yep.
You know, it's just, it was baffling, but I think I get it now.
Did you manage to speak to her about, I mean, I don't know what type of conversations will be taking place on sea, but did you manage to speak to her about Palestine and Gaza and Israel and Zionism? Did you get to speak to her about any of this stuff?
Absolutely. Like, I have heard that part of the, you know, the perception of her is that she's jumping on this new cause. But actually, the stuff that we talked about, and I was at an event with her in Ireland when she came to Ireland. Gladly, she comes to Ireland a lot these days, which is great for us. But she connects all these causes. So it's not like this is a new cause. She just puts the climate crisis movement exactly in lockstep with the pro-Palestine movement, because it's the same, I suppose, cohort of billionaires, really, that are oppressing all these different groups and also waging war against the planet. And as we've seen in the release of the Epstein files, are also exploiting, abusing and probably murdering children. It's the same cause, it's the same pro-humanity cause, and to separate them, I think, is only done by people that have an agenda to try and kind of reduce what she's doing to, I don't know, opportunism.
At any point did you regret going? At any point did you think, shit, what have I done here?
Oh, like loads of times. I mean, like, it's weird, right? You kind of, there was a lot of Irish on the boat, so I had like a lot of Irish and Turkish kind of brothers and sisters, and we were all kind of saying amongst ourselves, you know that what you're doing is just, so that gets you through it. But I mean, as you know, it's just slightly different when you've got kids.
Yeah.
So I'm willing to do lots of mad stuff on my own, and I always kind of have been, and I'm willing to put myself out there. But it gets harder and harder to do those things when you have to then go to your family and say, are you okay with me doing the mad thing? And there was moments where it was like, I mean, again, that night where it was like 3 o'clock in the morning, I was on a boat, 11 of the other boats had been hit. Drone strikes, we didn't know whether they were life-threatening drone strikes or not, with like the messages, because they block your communication, so we don't know what's happening with the other boats. As I say, there's no one coming to help. And at that moment, I was kind of like looking to the stars thinking, I definitely don't want to leave my kids without a dad. Like, that's my main kind of objective in life, I think. So I don't know what I go as far as to say regret, but the seriousness of it was kind of brought home to me. But again, then, like, I just think of my partner saying, this is what we signed up for, and people do an awful lot more brave stuff than I do, like carrying the resistance, you know, on the ground in Gaza and in Lebanon and in Iran now. So I feel like we have to do our bit in order to defeat this colossal, depraved empire that we're all kind of faced against, because we're all oppressed by it in some regard, I think, in some description or not.
How helpful is it having a partner like Claire? Because not many partners won't be as understanding or sympathetic to your altruistic causes.
Yeah.
You may not even be on the same page on some issues. How central is Claire to your strength and your resolve?
Yeah, she's everything. She's everything. There's nothing happens without her, I suppose, because as I say, all the decisions now, they have to be as a family. You know, like I have an older daughter, as you know, but I also have 2 daughters under 3. Mm-hmm. And so every single thing I do has to be a family decision. And again, I'm just so lucky that I have somebody in my life who kind of sees the world and all its problems similar to the way that I do. And she realizes that it's not everything to just look after your own kids. I mean, like, I was brought up in a country where, you know, you look after yourself and your family first of all. If you can help someone in your community, that's great, but it kind of stops there a little bit. And I suppose the last 2 years have just edged me further in the community to just, you know, accept a whole range of people, and the community is the world in many ways. Obviously, you need to be judicious about what you can and cannot do, and there's things that I would like to do that Claire has said I would prefer if you didn't do that, and that's part of it too. But I also have to. But you know what? I understand when people say it's selfish. I don't, because I've had people in my, maybe even in my family, definitely in my social circle, that they still don't understand why I went. They'll kind of say, well, Palestine isn't free yet, like, so obviously you failed. Yep. And you just worried your family and you maybe left your kids without a dad. I get that. I probably would have thought similar to that at a certain point in my life. And that's okay. I don't get too precious about it, because that would be making it very personal about me. But I still just believe that if you've got an opportunity to make a difference with a bigger cause, then you should try and go for that if you can, and still try and be a dad over here. And I don't know, there's no easy answer to it. I mean, it is selfish on one level. Activism is selfish.
It is, but we're all contributing towards something that's greater, for which the results are not now, and for which the results we don't even determine necessarily. We just need to do our bit.
Yeah.
Exhaust what we can do within the means and our capacity, with the consultation and support of our families, of course.
Yeah.
But to think that every single act or every single, you know, output will somehow lead to the liberation immediately, that's just not how it works.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, I mean, that's just cynical, like. But I suppose I have my own faith as well, and without being cheesy about it, I felt like it was the right thing to do for me to go. And I'm lucky that my partner agreed that it was the right thing for me to do.
Big up to Claire, man.
Yeah. Oh yeah, she's everything. Like, she's everything to me.
And in addition to that, you've been traveling since we last met.
Yeah.
Iran, Qatar, Lebanon. Which one of the countries did you visit first of the 3? Lebanon.
I think I went to Qatar actually first. And it was it was like an Al Jazeera event, so I didn't really see that much of the country or whatnot. I saw much more of Lebanon, which I think was next, and then Iran.
Did you see Khalid Mishal in Doha, the leader of Hamas?
Yes, recently I did. Yeah.
And did you get to exchange any words with him or anything?
No, I chased him out the door. I tried to catch up with him for a photo, but I was told that wouldn't be possible. And
how long was the Qatar trip?
I've gone twice now. Both of them were just a few days, maybe 4 or 5 days, and they're both for forums. And it was really interesting because they were about 2 years apart. And the second time round, there's a feeling of, I can't believe we're at another conference, you know? So I say this with respect to a lot of the people who are trying to do their best for the Palestinian cause. But I speak to some Palestinian friends, and there's a frustration that after over 2 years of genocide,
fancy conferences,
that we're still going to conferences and we're still getting nice food. And I accepted my nice food and I accepted my hotel, right? So I don't have all the answers, and I'm not perfect in any way, shape or form. But there's something absurd, I think, about still having conferences. Like, we're having conferences about having conferences to help the Palestinians. And there was a little bit the second time round that I felt from some people, not the ordinary folk who were speaking on panels, but people in positions of power, which were saying, in case you think we didn't do much over the last 2 years, we did this, this and this. So ultimately nothing has really changed on the ground, but we did try. And I think there's a lot of that going on, a lot of kind of revisionism of the last couple of years for people to absolve themselves of actually a lot of culpability, I think, and collaboration with a lot of the systems that have caused this genocide, in my opinion.
Ty, you know, when you're thinking about this whole situation, right, whether it's specifically the occupation of Palestine, the genocide in Gaza, or more broadly speaking, the death, the destruction, the destabilization of the Muslim majority world, the Middle East, do you ever wonder to yourself why Israel stands alone from all other 197 countries in the impunity in which it operates? Have you ever wondered why Israel? Not even Britain can move the way Israel moves.
Yeah.
Britain would have far more pushback from the international community if it did half the things which Israel did. But Israel moves with utter impunity, like an absolute pea-take. It's actually laughable and comical if it wasn't so true. Do you ever wonder to yourself the big why? How come?
I mean, of course I wonder, and without being too reductive about it, the lobby in the US and the lobby in Britain, not so much in Ireland, but the lobby in those two countries I'm reasonably familiar with, is so strong that I kind of understand why it has a level of impunity when there's that much, let's just say euphemistically, there's so much advocacy for the state from very powerful quarters. But I do also, like you, find it baffling. I find it infuriating. I find it absurd, even in our own experience recently on the flotilla, that I was part of a group of people that were trying to, none of us have criminal records, we're trying to get baby formula into Gaza, and we were abducted in international waters in accordance with international humanitarian law. Like, there's no arguments about this. It's a kidnapping, right? We're brought in the middle of the night through the desert to a prison where Ben Gvir said this is where the proper prisoners go. This is like a terrorist prison. Ketziat prison it's called. Palestinians are on another wing. God knows what's happening to them. Many of them are children. We're put into prison garb. We spend a few days there. Some of us are beaten. We're denied access to medicine. One of our comrades, an Irish man in his mid-70s, was denied access to insulin and left to die in his cell. It's a miracle the man survived. And all this happened. And then the Irish government, as far as they pushed, was we're working to try and get you guys home, which is like, please, Israel, let them out. Like, which is that's not my understanding of what you do in a kidnapping scenario. You know, you wouldn't have the police go, we're hoping the baddies let you out. We came home. I spoke to Amnesty International, a few other groups that were just baffled, frustrated, confused why the Irish government have said nothing. There's no official declaration. There's no Israel don't do this again. They can't even get the Irish government to do that. I have now heard that the Irish government are looking for the money to deport us. So the Israelis deported us and we had to stay a night in a hotel. I think the Irish government are looking for that money from us. So we now have to pay for the privilege of getting out of a kidnap situation from the Irish government.
That's absolutely bonkers.
And as you quite rightly point out, I said this in a previous interview, like, Ireland obviously has a checkered history with Britain. Britain wouldn't get away with doing this to Irish citizens. The US, there's no other country on earth that I can think of. Imagine if Iran or Russia abducted me in the morning. The Irish government would, there'd be press conferences. We got to get him out, bring him home.
From the rooftops.
So, as you say, and I think to get to the point that I'm making, because of this, all faith in the rules-based order, all faith in just basic right and wrong is gone.
It's done, isn't it?
It's done.
It really is done.
There's a bubbling up in Ireland, in Britain, in the US, and you can see it now with the anti-war sentiment that's kind of brewing everywhere. It's because the faith in what the leaders of the free world are telling us is gone forever. That, in my opinion, people aren't making enough of this. That's why the support for the war in America, I think, is really low as well. Because they're like, okay, this is the latest thing you're telling us. You know, we must do this because this, and this. You're not clear about what your reasons for going in there are. I think there's a kind of a fatigue with the leaders of the free world because international law has been destroyed, in my opinion, forever by Israel, or certainly in its current format. I still believe in international law. You do. But I'm just saying, if Israel has carte blanche to do what it likes, then in its current form, international law has no meaning.
Spot on. And now that there is a war in Iran, and we've entered the fourth week of it at the time of filming, that's also a country that you visited.
Yeah.
How did you find Iran?
Again, I think it's stupid for me to say, here's what Qatar was like, or here's what Iran was like.
Your personal anecdotal observations.
Yeah. Like, but I just want to say, like, I didn't get round the country and I had like 5 days in Tehran, right? But my first observation was that the Iranians reminded me quite a lot of the Irish insofar as they're a mess. They're all over the place. The guy who was translating for me at one point came into the lobby and said, Tadgh, you have an interview with Press TV at 4:00 yesterday. And I was like, well, dude, I'm obviously not going to make that. You know what I mean? Like, you were supposed to tell me that yesterday, like, you know. And that's very Irish. It's very bureaucratic, but it's like things don't kind of run on time, you know. Like, very Irish. So I felt at home with them a lot. I feel like they're a country that has been really hammered by the sanctions that are economic, but also the kind of psychological sanctions, the kind of propaganda sanctions. They've been put in a corner. And we're supposed to believe in the West that this is the most evil country that has ever existed, all conquering evil. They're up there with the Russians. And so I was going there with that mindset from the Western perspective. I'm also not an idiot. I don't support the government. I wasn't in Iran doing puff pieces for the government. In fact, sometimes when I was doing interviews, they'd ask me to assess something that the government had done or internal issues, and I would always say, I don't know anything about that. My understanding of this government or my awareness of this government is what it has done in a material sense for the Palestinian cause, which I think is unrivaled in the region. They've put their bodies on the line, I think, for the Palestinian cause, which we see today as well. And so my understanding of it was that the West has been absolutely lying about that country. Is it a perfect country? No. Does it oppress its own people at times? I would say definitely. But neither one thing is true. It's not. I don't believe that there's any regimes, to be honest with you. And I think if there are regimes, we're living in them. I think Britain and the US are two of the best examples of regimes I can think of. And the final thing I'll say just off the top of my head, I do notice a lot of Iranophobia. And I think you even get it in the pro-Palestine community here. Like, I have been sidelined from speaking at events. There was a stink off me as soon as I came back from Iran. And I know there was a stink because I was in contact with some people who I'd been working with in our side of the argument, and the phone stopped ringing after I went to Iran.
Do you think that's because that was a step too extreme, or was it to do with Syria?
Syria is a factor, of course, and I have got really good, like, Palestinian Sunni friends who've explained to me the context of Syria, and I get that. And I don't ever want to be treading. I mean, if somebody has had family members or people that they care about killed in a war that they blame Iran for, Iran proxies for, that's an actual thing. I understand that, and I don't want to be saying, "Hey, Irish comedian travels to Iran, everything's fine now. Put all that behind you."
Thank God.
But there was an element of the anti-Iran stuff, I felt, that was imperialism swallowed on our side. And it was like, here's the official line on Iran, here's their human rights record, I can't believe you travel to Iran, because that suddenly now means that you hate women.
Oh, so you're not necessarily talking about the intra-Muslim Sunni Shia dynamic difference. You're talking more the progressive. I'm
talking about the left, the so-called left in Britain.
Progressive left.
Yeah, so I had messages from one or two people. I'd probably remain nameless, but I had some messages when I got there saying, "Iran, really? question mark from some of the illiberal elite in Britain, who had basically said, you've crossed the line now by going to Iran. And that for me is kind of swallowed imperialism, because it basically says brown country's bad, this is a bad one, we've located this is a bad one, don't go there. So before we even get to the Sunni Shia stuff, I felt there was an awful lot of hypocrisy about going to Iran. And also, if I travel to Iran, I mean, I'll ask you as a friend, do you feel that that means that I endorse the actions of that government? I mean, like, I've travelled to the US, I've been to Britain, I'm in Britain right now.
I've been to Afghanistan. I was accused of being a Taliban propagandist. I've been to Syria. After Assad fell, I was accused of being a HTS Julani.
I've heard that. I've heard that rumour.
MI5 pillars. I went to Bangladesh after Hasina fell, and I was accused of being an Islamist revolutionary.
Yeah.
So that's all. It's all a cop out.
Yeah.
You know, as journalists, as content creators, as influencers, we travel the breadth of the world.
Yeah.
And we report with what we can. Some countries will have more restrictions than others. Other countries will have more cultural nuances and sensitivities than others.
Yeah.
But no, I don't think you going to Iran had anything to do with that. Yesterday's episode was with Sister Bushra Sheikh. Bushra Sheikh also went to Iran.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious to know what your last observations were. But no, I think that's very lazy. I think it's lazy to think that because an influencer or said journalist goes to a country, all of a sudden they're now a paid propagandist. Utter BS, to be honest.
And like, nobody would have pushed back against me going to the US or Britain at the time, you know. And I think that hypocrisy, like, I was glad to call that out, because no one would say, oh, you endorse Starmer. Do I endorse Starmer because I'm here? I mean, I didn't pay for my own flights to get here today.
Smart.
Does that mean I'm a paid propagandist for the British regime?
Yeah.
Do you know?
So how did the invitation come about to Iran?
There was a film festival, a media festival called SOB, and it's on its third year now, I think, at this point, and it's Gaza orientated. So actually myself and Sean Murray, who you know, were invited because we had both made work.
Big up to Sean.
I love Sean. And we got so much hassle when we got home, but anyway, we may or may not get into that. But we were invited because we both made work that they felt had stood out in its advocacy for the Palestinian cause. And so I don't get any invitation from any film festivals in Britain and Ireland or America because of my work. In fact, I get my Instagram page taken down. I get all my commercial work lost. And so I don't, and I didn't. But even if I had become a paid propagandist for the Iranian regime, like, what do you want from me? Like, what does the West want from me? Like, my career's over in the West. I can't get any commercial work. But then I also can't in any way consort with any of the enemies of the West. Like, you've destroyed me, and now you don't want me to pick up the pieces.
Just stay permanently broke.
Yeah, you know.
Just stay permanently broke.
You know, and it's so funny to me when I get accused of being a grifter. Like, I don't have any work. And, like, I don't know if people have heard about the internet or not, but people have been making a living on the internet for quite some time now. But if you try and recoup any of the losses you've incurred from speaking out for the pro-Palestine cause, then you're described as a grifter for making, you know, €5 or €10 on Patreon. But yeah, and then obviously on the Shia Sunni thing, again, I'm an idiot. I'm a comedian from Cork. I'm learning all this. As an outsider, I noticed that there was some anti-Shia sentiment from within the Palestinian community, even, which, to be honest, shocked me. I don't fully understand, or I didn't fully understand it.
It exists.
And then I get Syria, and I understood from my perspective, for instance, Hezbollah, I was looking at Hassan Nasrallah as an anti-imperialist, a freedom fighter, and somebody who had handed the Israelis their arse twice. That was my perspective on it. And I felt like Syria was something that unfortunately they got involved in because partly to do with the way in which empire works. And they were so Iran was so isolated, and Hezbollah by extension was so isolated that I felt that they were probably having to do something that they didn't want to do, and that was my perspective on it. I've probably learned more since then. I don't think anybody is perfect. I don't think the Iranians are perfect, but all I know for sure, having been to these places and now kind of reflecting on it myself, is that the divide and conquer that exists in the Arab Muslim world, that existed and still exists in Ireland, is exactly what empire wants, and it's exactly what the US and Britain and Israel wants more than anything now, for us all to stay divided. And I just think there's such an incredible opportunity there for some sort of unity in saying, what exactly are we up against right now? US, Zionist, billionaire class, who just want us all fighting with each other, want all these countries balkanized, and they want to continue exerting control over all of our lives.
There's much truth in that, and I'll echo much of what you said in terms of the overall sentiments.
Please push back. Please push back.
No, I will. Intra-Muslim sectarianism or schisms, at least between the Sunni and Shia, it's been there for over 1,000 years, and it's not going anywhere. There's a lot of historical grievances. There's a lot of theological irreconcilable differences, but mostly we've coexisted and lived together for the best part since the inception of the faith. That's one thing. The way that's weaponized by Western powers, like they've historically done, like they did with the Alawites in Syria and with other groups in other parts of the Levant, is that they will weaponize those differences, will cause death, destruction, divide and conquer, sectarian lines, borders which can basically be arbitrarily created on the whims of Sykes and Picot.
Yeah.
That's the problem, and that is an undeniable priority in terms of the Muslims to understand that whatever differences we have, they're always going to be here, and they can be resolved in the way they've been resolved historically.
Yeah.
Right? Syria is one of those issues for me. It was part of the broader Arab Spring. And the Arab Spring was a period, Ty, where after decades of living under, despots,
Of course.
nearly all of whom were Western-backed, from Mubarak in Egypt. Okay, Gaddafi's more of an open debate, right? But Ben Ali in Tunisia, Ali Abdullah Saleh in Yemen, outright tyrannical regimes, right? And it was a moment of hope for the Arab Muslim world. That is this it? Is this the time where we overthrow our dictators and establish something that's more free and representative of our people? Obviously, that wasn't the case.
Yeah.
It was infiltrated, it was manipulated, and we just had cosmetic changes in some countries and then just outright civil war in others, Libya and Syria.
Yeah.
In the case of Assad, he needs to be understood from outside of the Axis narrative. This was someone who was a brutal dictator.
Yeah.
He is someone who's responsible for the deaths of hundreds and thousands of his people.
Yeah.
Right.
100%.
He had air power. The revolutionaries, even if they were NATO-backed, pro-Western, whatever it is you want to call them, they didn't have air power. They didn't have the ability to drop bombs. Only Assad and the Russians had that. So obviously 600,000 Syrians minimum were obliterated, killed, wiped out. Vast majority were Sunnis. And it's hard to try to convince Syrian Sunnis that Hezbollah and Iran are heroes in this. Because ultimately what you're trying to convince is you're trying to convince the people that your killers are your heroes.
Yeah.
So I think the only two groups of Muslims I personally give exemption to when it comes to taking a position on Iran is Syrians and Iraqis.
Yeah.
Because of how deep-rooted the grievance is and how Iran, in the case of Syria, it was not the best foreign policy call.
Yeah.
At all.
I think
actually, they backed the wrong horse.
I think we could probably all agree on that.
Because Iran backed the revolution against Mubarak in Egypt. Iran backed the revolution against Ben Ali in Tunisia. They were overwhelmingly in support of all the revolutions during the Arab Spring, except for Syria.
Yes.
So I think that was a foreign policy move that Iran, sadly, is still probably paying for in terms of the overall sentiments. Because you would think, because when Hezbollah had the war with Israel in 2006, they were the sweethearts of the Sunni Arab world.
Of course, yeah.
Everyone loved Hezbollah.
There was a unanimity to
exactly.
the support.
Unanimous, right? The Syrians welcomed in. They were the sweethearts and the heroes of the Arab Muslim world. That's not the case now.
Yeah.
And I think Syria has a lot to do with it. So when I speak to comrades from our side, sometimes they're not aware of those intricacies.
Of course.
Those kind of regional intricacies. Because they'll take the Axis line or the resistance, and most of that could also be correct.
Yeah.
That on paper, it is these entities and these countries that are doing materially the most, incomparably to the Sunni Arab states, in actually helping Palestinians resist this occupation. That's a fact. I don't think that we can even dispute that.
Yeah.
But then there's the intra-regional dynamics.
Of course. And I'd like to think I would be aware enough to know that no side or no country or no government is always doing the right thing. You know what I mean? Just on that very basic level that
I don't even believe nation states are inherently good.
I agree totally.
They can't, because
the hypocrisy is the thing that I've always been trying to call out. I'm quite comfortable for you to say Iran is bad, this country's bad, this country's bad, as long as you're aware of how bad Britain, Germany and the US are. I'm totally happy with that.
Sure.
But there was just one thing I wanted to add on that, which is the kind of thing that I struggle with, right, is when you have some even Palestinian voices And they're still saying it, saying, don't trust Iran, never trust Iran. Like when I was going over, I had a lot of Sunni friends in Ireland saying, don't do this. Like, you don't know what's going to happen to you when you go there. Like, again, this all conquering evil kind of thing. But the line is, they're doing it for their own reasons. They don't really support us. It's a totally cynical, operation that they're pro-Palestine. And all I saw there when I was there, and all I see now, is Iranians putting their body on the line. Their school children are getting slaughtered. Their heritage sites are being destroyed. They are losing their own people. And a lot of the proxy, like the so-called proxies that they support, are also losing their own people. Like Hezbollah are dying and Iranians are dying in the field fighting against Zionism right now. So I just don't understand the framing of it as don't trust them. They've got their own malevolent reason for doing it, as if they're somehow self-protecting in this war. Whereas actually I'm seeing a lot of the Shia Muslims fighting and dying, and I'm seeing a lot of the Sunni leaders profiteering from the genocide and the wars in the region. So I do struggle with that kind of framing of Iran as...
Have those conversations gone with Palestinian brothers?
Not great. Not great, But also, I understand that I'm aware of how arrogant and ridiculous it would be for me, who's just an ally of the cause, to be in saying, you've got them all wrong. I know this stuff is deep-seated. And I also realise how kind of reductive it is for me to say, this is all imperialism. But I just come from a country where I know what the colonised mind has done to Ireland, and it still exists. You still have people who side with empire in Ireland. And I just think like the British perfected the divide and conquer kind of thing. And it's the thing that still operates in empire's favour in the region, and it's just such a pity that there can't be a process of kind of moving beyond that, because if the Arab and Muslim and anti-imperialist world united right now, I think we could achieve a really great thing, which would be the death of Zionism and US imperialist control in the region.
How much of the conversations you had with the Sunni Palestinians or the critics of Iran was centered around obviously Syria?
Syria is number one.
Yeah, Syria is usually one. Then it might be Iraq there as well. Also, that Iran actually contributed towards both the US and Afghanistan invasions. Have you heard that one?
Yes, a little bit. The other one, and I'm not any one particular person, and I'm just going to be careful now that I'm not going to characterise any friend.
Don't characterise anyone, but just some of the arguments.
Yeah, the general argument, right, will be something along the lines of just basic suspicion for Shia Muslims as well. I have to say that, and that's why, to go back to like the kind of liberal lefty world here in Britain, there's all out Iranophobia as well as an actual thing. It seems like it's kind of acceptable in the West now to be anti-Iran. That's a nice position to be politically. Like if you were to say something outright anti-Iran traditionally over the last 10 years in the West, and you were a politician, mainstream journalist, there'd be no pushback whatsoever. Same with Russia. There's a real exceptionalism around Russia. Do I agree with Russia's war in Ukraine? No, but do I understand the reasons for it? Probably yes. But park all that just to be actually negative and just to be discriminatory towards just a Russian person, I think is wrong on all levels, because they don't represent their government.
Of course.
I don't represent the Irish government, etc., etc. I do notice a lot of that with Iran. It's become, or it's always been arguably since the revolution, just kind of socially acceptable to be anti-Iran. And that's something that I like to push back on, because it's swallowed imperialism for me.
Don't want to spend too much time on this point.
Yeah, it's interesting though, because I'm learning too. I don't know. Like,
I think there are very genuine and deep grievances towards Iran, particularly to do with Syria and Iraq.
Yeah,
but there's other issues there at hand as well. Afghans have these grievances. Iraqis have these grievances. There were operational conjunctions and collaborations during the invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan. Iran, from a national interest point of view, didn't want a hostile Saddam on their western flank, and they didn't want a hostile Sunni Taliban in their eastern flank. So even from a national interest point of view, they can make a case to say that, it worked in our favor, at least in the short term, right? Iran's influence in Iraq exponentially increased after the Americans left. Heinous crimes were committed in Syria. Heinous, right? Along sectarian lines. Then there's the whole historical stuff as well. There's a lot of history where, at least in Sunni history, it has been presented that there's always been a conspiration between elements within Shia leadership and conspiring with enemies and stuff like that. So
Right.
that's obviously been fed to us over the years. There's truth in this. A lot of it's also been romanticized and glamorized to advance certain propaganda of the time.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of the grievances is genuine. I think a lot of it's deep held, but I think there's a timing for it. I think the schism between Sunni and Shia Islam is something that's going to exist forever.
Yeah, of course.
Right?
Yeah.
Simply because it's been there since pretty much the inception. Right. The whole difference was who was going to inherit leadership after Prophet Muhammad.
Yeah.
Was it Ali, his first cousin and son-in-law, or was it Abu Bakr, his closest companion? Ultimately, that's the difference.
Yeah.
Along many other things. However, I think the timing of what's happening around us is crucial.
Yes.
And the timing of sectarian narratives, and understanding that you can have so many differences with Iran as a Muslim, intra-Muslim perspective. But know that when they're attacking Iran, as Pete Hegseth said, they're not differentiating between Sunni and Shia.
Bang on.
They are not differentiating between Sunni and Shia. Netanyahu is not differentiating between Sunni and Shia. Mike Huckabee mentioned, he tried it. He was like, okay, our Sunni partners need to be aware of this messianic Mahdi movement, as if to teach Sunnis about our differences with the Shia.
Yes.
So we can see all of this at play. We can see on the one side, the imperialists do not differentiate. When there's no benefit for them, there's no differentiation.
Of course.
And when there's a benefit for them, there will be a differentiation. And I think we need to be smart enough to identify that, to call it out, and to navigate our politics accordingly. That's what I think.
That's such a good point. And I was just thinking that as you were sharing earlier, like the likes of Lindsey Graham or these types of people.
Come on.
It's just brown people. He doesn't care. And I would say a lot of them don't know. They don't even know. Do you think like before Trump got to office that he would have a deep and meaningful understanding of the intricacies of the ethnic layout of Iran? Of course not. It's just like oil, let's bomb them. And it's all the same people who were cheerleading for Iraq are cheerleading for Iran now. So I think that would be my bottom line as well, that like I obviously see things through the prism, I suppose, of the anti-imperialist lens, but to a lot of the people who are like banging those drums right now, they don't know and they don't care.
They don't care. What was Lebanon like?
I love Lebanon. Yeah, I love the people. I love the food. I was talking to somebody else about this. There's a kind of a sadness there as well, where, and you can see it right now. It's happening again. Walking around Beirut, it felt like this is a city that's always in the midst of trying to rebuild from the last time it was destroyed. Mm-hmm. You know, like you'd see buildings that people have kind of almost looked to me like they'd given up and trying to reconstruct, and then some new places are being reconstructed. It seems to be constantly pockmarked by war. But the people are completely like so welcoming and so loving and so spirited. I have mixed feelings about trying to characterize it as a place that could have been the Riviera, or could have been, I mean, it seems like an incredible holiday destination. When I got there, I thought I should be really here with my partner and kids. But I mean, if that's what they want to be, then that's what it should have been. But then again, that's quite a Western perspective or whatnot, you know. But I did notice something in the people. I think I got it a bit in Iran, but I definitely got it more so in Lebanon, which was that like these people won't be defeated, you know, as in they won't give up. And so again, I just find it so baffling that I'm some lad who doesn't know much. I'm a comedian from Cork, and yet I had a good understanding that like the people who support the resistance in Lebanon, or the Iranian people, or the Palestinian people, they're not going to just give up. They're not going to put their hands up. How, like, you know, the U.S. and Israel, after trying to defeat the Palestinian resistance for over maybe 2.5 years at this point, have still not done that, have still not disarmed them. How they thought that in a week or so, Hezbollah and Iran would throw their hands up and that they would win that war. Like, they just don't have any understanding at all, I think, of people who have a faith, any faith at all. But particularly, I think the Muslim faith, it's just built in that you keep going, like you keep fighting. And that spirit is really, it's very beautiful to be around. I think I hit off it and thought, wow, in this region, there's a lot of people that have something to live for and something to fight for and something to unify them that I don't see in the West at all, sadly.
I mean, you're spot on. The line that's been taught throughout the centuries within the Islamic tradition when it comes to warfare, liberation and resistance is victory or martyrdom, isn't it?
Yeah. And as a friend of mine from Iran said recently, and either way it's victory.
Yeah, because
You know,
if you die a martyr's victory in the afterlife.
But I mean that's intuitive for you, but that blew my mind. I was like, you literally can't beat that mentality. You know what I mean? It's
You can't. And obviously another famous saying, and this is from, by the way, before anyone clips these clips up, these are from the history books of Islamic history books where they talk about wars and liberations and great victories. Is that how do you defeat a people who love death more than you love life, right? And I remember when Finkelstein, when I had him on 2 years ago, he was like, look, Israelis are people of this world. They love this, they live for this world. This world and life is everything to them. There's nothing greater beyond the material. And he goes, that's basically, that's his observation. One of his observations of Israeli society is that they're very worldly people, not necessarily people of happiness and joy, but just very worldly. And he goes, whereas the Palestinians are starkly different to that.
Yeah.
There's simply a greater purpose generationally, and it's just inbuilt. It's within the DNA. There's no amount of de-radicalization that's going to change that.
Can I ask you, at a quick tangent, but can I ask your take on the fact that there then seems to be around 93% of Israelis that welcome this new war? Like, even if not as many of them are getting killed, they're spending most of their life in bomb shelters at the moment. And yet still 93% of them, whatever you think about the moral issue of the fact the slaughter they've committed in Palestine, Lebanon, and still that many of them want this new war. That's not life-loving people to me.
It's not, no. They love their own lives.
Yeah.
It wasn't a case of they love other people's lives. They love their own lives that they've established on stolen land. That's the life that they love.
And is it worth living in a bomb shelter?
I mean, definitely not. But I think the ideology of Zionism has a genocidal impulse.
Yeah, they're addicted to war. I think.
And it's this kind of never-ending bloodletting of Palestinians, right? And what they obviously don't understand is that the blood soaks the ground and it gives root to the new resistance.
Well, this is it.
Or new groups, new formations. Doesn't matter about the ideology. They could be left-leaning, right-leaning, nationalists, Islamists, whatever it is. You soak the land with the blood of the people. Just another generation is going to come.
100%.
That's what's going to happen.
That was one experience from Lebanon, right? Which we've obviously talked about the fact that certainly not a universally admired figure in the Arab and Muslim world, but at Hassan Nasrallah's funeral, I knew that it was a complete misconception for the Israelis to say Hezbollah are defeated now. They had their beeper attack, and apparently the news on the street was that Hezbollah are over, and so much so that now when Hezbollah are fighting back heroically in Lebanon, there's a shock and awe in the Western world, particularly in Israel, going, we thought these guys were beaten. Because as you say, and this was the Irish story, this is why I think Irish people have a unique angle on this, that when there was brutality against our leaders, when our leaders were martyred, and we would also use the term martyr, that's when our revolution really kick-started. And I saw that. I mean, what do you do with 1.4 million people on the street that are attending the funeral of this person because you've taken out a few of their leaders? Where are all these people going to go? And it seems that they just stoke more and more hatred and more fervour in the community. And I again, to go back to what we were saying at the start, that gives me a lot of hope that with every new atrocity, you know, they say like they kill someone and they say eliminated, as if they're eliminating the resistance. But obviously, you know, and I know, and particularly as an Irish person, resistance is a passion, it's an idea, it's a philosophy, it's a way of life. It's somebody else is just going to take their place. And
it doesn't stop until liberation is achieved.
No.
Or until victory is achieved.
And the key thing we're getting now, in my humble opinion, because I was on the boat with Chief Mandela, Nelson Mandela's grandson, who's extraordinary guy, and one of the nights he treated us, you know, every night you're trying to pass away the time, and I did like a little open mic one night, and other people were telling stories, and one time we just sat round Chief Mandela, and he gave us a 2-hour whistle-stop tour through the liberation of the South African people, and it was incredible. But he was kind of making the point that all the different elements had to come together. So there were the equivalent of flotillas, there was the cultural impact, there was global opinion. It's not just all about the people, you know, because sometimes from my perspective, like I have quite a radical, I suppose, view on revolution, and it's about the guys who take up the guns, and, you know, but that's just a part of it. What's happening now with the pro-Palestine movement, finally, in my opinion, is that there really is a global, not just in the global
There is.
south, but there's a kind of a global consensus almost kind of creeping in, which is very exciting, you know, that like, and again, it's because like the British Empire, it's when their brutality was exposed and they kept escalating their brutality, they just turn the public off them, and that's really happening now in real time. You know, like whatever they're going through right now, and they're doing their little videos on the internet about, oh my God, we have to go to the bomb shelter again. Look at us saving a dog. I don't know if you noticed, but like, because I'm on Twitter a lot because I'm insane.
Yeah, you're ratioing every single one of them.
I hate myself. But it's no longer even a game to ratio them. Like, you just post anything.
Yeah.
Like, their narrative is, I mean, these guys spend millions on Hasbara, and it's all, they're being defeated by like some lunatic with no money, like from Cork. It's just, it's over, man. I think, you know, I'm not, and I again, look, the people who are being slaughtered by them right now don't feel it's over, but at least I think we can see the light at the end of the tunnel from this very dark period for humanity, in my opinion.
You're ratioing them for fun. Especially Elon Levi, that character.
Can we get into the content of that on this
No,
podcast?
maybe not. Maybe not.
People can just go and search it in their own time.
They can search it themselves. But talking of X, right? It's one of the platforms. One of the main platforms, mainstream platforms that you should remain and have a platform.
Yeah.
What do you think of the algorithm there? Because depending on what you're clicking or engaging with, it could just be non-stop anti-Islam, anti-Muslim slop of the most lowest unintelligent kind of Neanderthal type of BS, right? Or you're ratioing Israelis and Zionists. What's your algorithm newsfeed look like?
Like we were saying earlier, right-wing commentators, right-wing tech guys, right-wing, whoever they are, if you have integrity, I respect you. If you have so if you're a free speech absolutist, which I think Musk would probably describe himself as, then you want to get rid of people being cancelled, which, by the way, I probably would agree with. I don't like seeing people being cancelled for tweets they wrote 10 years ago. We all grow. I'm in recovery from drink and drug addiction. I probably would have done stuff 10 years ago. I probably would have spoken about women maybe in my teenage years that would have been disrespectful. I wouldn't want those views to be seen as the rock that I perish on, and that's who I am. We're all changing. We're all self-conscious. 100%. We're all growing. But it's okay for Musk and his cohort to see people being cancelled for tweets years ago or something that they say against not Jews, but it's characterised as Jews, against Israel. Now, I have a mate of mine who's had his account suspended for mocking Musk's torso. Like, that was the tweet before he got his account taken out, because the guy's got a weird ass torso. And yet Professor Morandi in Iran has got a bounty out on him at the moment from somebody who's trying to crowdfund to murder the bloke.
$1 million.
And as we speak, the tweet is still up. So I don't respect free speech for me, but not for thee. And that's where a lot of these guys are headed, you know. But again, though, Dilly, like, I am so buzzing that every second day you turn on Twitter and, as you say, slop, Zionist slop, fascist slop, anti-Muslim slop, we're all tweeting about it, laughing about it. That's getting more traction than what he's dishing up for us. So it's over. I think they're just throwing stuff at the wall at this point. But I do think there's an important point there. Like, for instance, I believe in free speech. I don't believe that you should post saying, this is where Tadgh Hickey lives, you should go and kill him. But I believe that your views, because if a Zionist and a pro-Palestinian both air their views, in fact, I hope that I'm going to speak to you about this. I'm hoping to interview people in the little bits and pieces that we're doing in media at the moment. For now, it's called @NOOW, not on our watch. I'm hoping to not just interview other pro-Palestinians where we fall asleep together and enjoy the echo chamber. I want to be challenged. I'll even speak to some Zionists and whatnot. I'll speak to anybody because I do believe in free speech. But if you're trying to manipulate algorithms and if you're banning people for criticising Israel, you're doing nothing but stoking anti-Semitism.
100%.
Because now the conspiracy theorists, and like we talked about it off camera, now the actual anti-Semites are going, see, I told you, they get special treatment, they're a protected species, and that makes you hate them.
When are you kicking off the new show?
I've started doing 1 or 2 little interviews, hopefully all going well. I will be interviewing Professor Morandi in the next few days, and it's on YouTube and hopefully Rumble as well. And obviously we're talking about the war a lot at the moment, but going forward, as I say, I want to talk to people who I have a certain view, for instance, on the so-called terrorists in Ireland. I'd love to talk to somebody from the conservative side in Britain who would describe the people who fought for the liberation of their country in my country as terrorists. Let's have the debate rather than shouting at each other. I don't want to do debate me bro kind of stuff. I want to actually talk and let people, conversations, particularly with Zionists, which again is a tricky area, and that's the other area where I've had mild to moderate pushback from my Palestinian friends, and I get that.
All Zionists or just Israelis?
All Zionists, all Zionists. I mean, I think I would love to hear as an Israeli Zionist defend and articulate some of the things that we've all seen over the last 2.5 years, because they don't ever really do that. They usually just deflect and get into something else, and they'd say Hamas, they say all Muslims are evil. But let's just have the conversation. How can you defend, for instance, fathers carrying bags of their what they believe to be like flesh of their slaughtered children? Like, how can we ever contextualize that? So I'm open. I've reached out to a couple of high profile Zionists. One followed me. I'm shocked that she followed me. I won't mention her name because it'll maybe disrupt the slight possibility that she will end up doing the interview. Nothing back so far, but I am open if anybody's interested.
Sounds good. What do you think of the Epstein files? I mean, we've touched upon it. I mean, we've mentioned a lot of the culprits. Trump's been mentioned there thousands of times. At least 3 accusations of him raping a minor. The Clintons, Stephen Hawkins, Richard Dawkins, all the flag bearers of Judeo-Christian civilization, all either implicated for association or incriminated in some shape or form. And
a lot of the mind, body, and spirit people as well.
Of course, yeah.
What's that guy? Deepak Chopra was in there,
he was there as well.
I mean, for me, it's a moment, right, where I was actually talking to a buddy of mine about this recently, where I would have always described myself as a lefty. I would have been a borderline Marxist, anti-imperialist kind of type. I'm finding myself more and more, and I don't know, maybe I'll go all the way around the houses and I'll come back again, but I'm finding myself more and more just almost like bored of the left and right thing. It feels to me like there's a cohort, and it's a podcast I'm trying to work on with another buddy of mine, a separate project, where we try to discuss the fact that, there's zombies in the house right now, right? So are we going to look at each other and have a debate about the finer details of what Marx meant? Or are we going to pick up a steak and hand a steak to your buddy and just let's get rid of the zombies first of all? And the zombies are this billionaire class. The zombies are this class of people who overwhelming evidence suggests that they're certainly abusing children. Let's remind each other, they're children. You've got children, I've got children. I'm looking at it through I obviously would probably be against, the exploitation of children anyway. But when you have, in my case, girls and young girls, you're kind of looking at it going, so these people, you're still buying their, computers, you're buying their cars, you're supporting a lot of the governments that they run. You still believe in some sort of version of MAGA, like when you know that this guy is, bare minimum, aware and party to a lot of the crimes. I mean, that would be the bare minimum. And so, if you even park Israel for a moment and park nation states, there's a billionaire class that they do their own thing, they support each other, they always survive. I mean, that's how this thing worked. They're all so powerful that none of them can go down, so they support each other. That's the enemy for me. I honestly, in the short term, don't care whether you're right, left, somewhere in the middle, or none at all. I feel like if we could empower people to be like, these guys think that you and I are at best irrelevant. We are chewing gum on their shoe. They want to continue doing what they want, extracting wealth where they can get it, abusing children and running their elitist paedophile ring in peace. Thank you very much. They don't want any questions about it. Can we all agree that we're against that?
For sure, we have to. You know what I mean? We have to be.
We have to be for the survival, I think, of our souls or something. I mean, it's a real. I think we're in an existential battle, quite aside from this war, against this billionaire class that again are trying to destroy to go back to the planet for a minute, are also trying to destroy the planet. And they all want us fight, the divide and conquer thing. These absolute lunatics in Palantir, they're on record of saying it, that's what's good for them. War is good for them, civil war is good for them, balkanizing countries is good for them. That's what they want. Let's not give it to them. Let's unify now, and we can sort out your interpretation of Marx afterwards.
So linked to that, the last time we merely skirted over this subject, we touched upon last time an emergence or re-emergence of ethno-nationalism. which wasn't something that's necessarily accustomed to Irish politics, right?
Not at all.
But it's definitely gained momentum here. It's gained momentum in America. Some of the individuals that we met, that we mentioned, that were opposed to the Iran war and anti-Zionist happened to be ethno-nationalists. I mean, Nick Fuentes would describe himself as a Catholic ethno-nationalist. We have white identitarians here in the form of Restore Britain, Rupert Lau. And these voices are getting louder, and they are most certainly picking up momentum in the UK at least. What's the situation with ethno-nationalism in Ireland?
I mean, sadly, it is also growing. It is also a thing. I think the thing that I find most frustrating about it, and I'm trying to figure out how I could possibly be useful with my little place in all this world, which is to try and differentiate between the actual grievances that people have because of failings in the Irish government. For instance, there are documented cases of asylum seekers being facilitated in hotels in small Irish towns, no consultation with the community whatsoever. And I suppose if I was in a small Irish town,
I'd want to be consulted.
Absolutely. Whether I want to have let's move beyond all this like unvetted stuff, right? That's their kind of far right talking points. But the actual essence of what's going on is a community being overlooked by the government again. And the government enjoys the fact that we're all fighting amongst ourselves and we're all blaming immigrants. So there's that. There's the legitimate concerns of communities in Ireland, 100%, through government failings. But also then there's this few little agitators who are exploiting that for their own agenda, and they're undoubtedly being funded by elements in the so-called UK and the US. And these groups are also associated with Israel. If we look at someone like Tommy Robinson, for instance, the evidence is overwhelming that he's being directly funded by at least Zionist adjacent billionaires. And I have noticed in Ireland, and many others have noticed, that a lot of these kind of, ethno-nationalist candidates went from being figures of fun in Ireland to now suddenly they have some of the slickest poster campaigns for local elections. And so they're obviously being well funded and well supported. Is it growing in the actual community? Are they going, like, they haven't had any electoral power up to this date, but is there
a party that represents that type of politics?
There are a few smaller parties, but none with any kind of, and I'm not saying this being cynical, I'm being like absolutely honest with you, like there is no party that represents that viewpoint that has anything more than 1 or 2% in the polls right now. But there are lots of people who, some of whom have gone down rabbit holes during COVID. They have been taught from the algorithm that it's all Muslims' fault. There are some people with legitimate concerns that are really annoyed at the fact that some of the left-leaning parties don't really seem to be doing anything meaningful about it. The government obviously don't care about them, and they're wide open to be commandeered and to be sucked up by these kind of groups. So I think if the government doesn't do anything meaningful about what's actually going on in those communities, it's only going to go one way. And I found myself at a counter rally to a pro-Palestine march in Cork about 6 months ago. A lot of people were bussed in for it. A lot of people were flown in for it from England. But I have to say, shocked at the numbers that there were, I think, probably about 1,000 or 2,000 people on the streets of a small city in Ireland. That before would have been 2 lads and his dog. So it's absolutely growing for all the same reasons that it's growing in Britain and the US, which is saddening to me. But the one way I won't help, I think, with the situation is to call them all racists and to say, no, you're totally wrong. All these small towns in Ireland should have no consultation with the government whatsoever and should welcome X hundred numbers of immigrants tomorrow to a town that it can't cater for its community right now. It doesn't have the services right now. So it's a complex one.
Do you think Conor McGregor's a manifestation of this growing frustration? I mean, not him as an individual. I mean, obviously he's a billionaire cartoon character. We know that much. But in terms of how many Irish folk do you actually thought that this guy could become president?
I think even within the nationalist circles in Ireland, and I would say, the ethno-nationalists as opposed like the progressive kind of anti-imperialist nationalism, he's kind of seen as a figure of fun, really. Like he's got massive traction online because he's an incredibly famous person. But I don't know, is there much, even because we had a presidential election recently and there was seen as a far right candidate who people had in mind, but Conor McGregor didn't kind of come up. You know what I mean? So what I'm concerned about is, again, this is just my opinion, but what I'm concerned about is there isn't really a charismatic, well-read, well-thought-out leader has emerged in the Irish.
An Irish Farage or an Irish Tommy Robinson.
Yes, or there's a guy in France, I can't think of his name, he's like Maria Le Pen's successor. He's young, he's slick, he's gay, and he's bringing in the kind of gay, it's almost like the fash are kind of abandoning the homophobia, let's just go anti-Islam. Like, if someone like that comes along, I think Ireland will be wide open to him, because there's such rightful disillusion with the mainstream media and the main political parties. Again, Israel has been a massive role in destroying faith in kind of everything. So it's wide open for a charismatic right-leaning leader, as Donald Trump turned out to be in the US. One hasn't come along. Is he coming along? Absolutely. It's just a matter of time. That's what's quite scary, actually.
Bringing the podcast to a close, and I wanted to end today's conversation on these two particular subjects. One, because we share one in commonality, fathers of two young kids, our little ones the same age, between 2 and 4, and sobriety. So let me start with sobriety. How long have you been clean?
What month have we now?
March 2026.
Yeah, this May, actually. This May, I will be 11 years clean and sober.
Allahu Akbar. Yeah. And do you ever think about sessioning?
No. Like, we may have touched on it the last time. It's a strange one to speak to young lads going into recovery, where all that's on their mind is to get out of their head, because they're in a lot of pain, they have a lot of trauma, they're bored, there's nothing else to do. But when you get into a recovery program and you give yourself to a faith, we call it higher power, which I have a strong relationship with a higher power, you kind of do some of that healing. You don't feel as uncomfortable in yourself anymore. A lot of Irish people, I think we touched on this before, a lot of Irish people are drinking their head off because they just feel uncomfortable.
Anxiety, they need anxiety.
Yeah. They go into a lot of people, like, I mean, I used to meet a woman, I used to meet anyone without having a few drinks before I go into the pub. So it's all social anxiety, or I think they call it generalized anxiety now, which I'm slightly skeptical of. But it's not feeling right in yourself. When you do the work, thanks to my higher power and the recovery program, I don't feel uncomfortable in myself a lot of the time. Like, to do something like this would be unthinkable before I went into recovery without being drunk. I'd have to get here drunk and be chewing gum and then put it in the bin just before we'd start. I don't feel the need to do that anymore. So there's no desire to drink. I mean, why would you drink if you feel comfortable?
I remember you told me last time, you guys did a group of Irish lads, if they knew that there was a group of other lads who don't drink, what the hell do you lot do for socializing?
I know.
Like, honestly, what do you guys actually do?
And it's funny, like, because as you know, I was doing Ramadan and I was breaking my fast with some Palestinian friends and other Arab friends, whatever. And at night, eating together, I was like, this is so beautiful, like eating together and hanging out and chatting and whatnot. But again, when I was drinking, I'm like, you're going to meet a bunch of lads and you're going to eat food. Like, that just seems like a complete waste of time. But I wasn't eating much food when I was drinking anyway, I suppose.
How was Ramadan? Fasting for 12 and a half, 13 hours.
Beautiful. I mean, you've told me that I've started at a good time.
Yeah, you the winter fasts for the next 10 years.
Do you know what? I probably lost a bit of weight. I feel a little bit better in myself. I was concentrating quite well in work. All good things. I found the not drinking tough because I like a good cup of tea. But as I said, the most beautiful thing by far was doing something collectively with people. Again, like, I'm obsessed with the fact that the West has lost touch with a lot of the things that bring people together. Mm-hmm. Simple as that. What brings us together? I mean, I can't think of anything really, except maybe Celtic matches for me. But yeah, just like, you have this thing in common with friends of yours. You go and meet them, you have a beautiful meal together. I can't think of anything. And it gave me so much gratitude. Again, without being cheesy, gratitude is a big part of my recovery program. But I now had the gratitude of, like, I'm going to sit down and have an evening meal, whether it's with my Palestinian friends or my family, and I feel like I've earned something to get it. Like, you know, very beautiful.
Did Claire try fasting?
No, she was doing her own kind of version of dieting at the time, like post kids and stuff. So we didn't want to get in the way of that. I'd say she might give it a go next time, though, particularly if it's getting progressively easier.
Yes. The next 10 years are going to be very short, or they're going to get progressively get a bit shorter. A lot of Muslim addicts, crack addicts, heroin addicts, not so much alcoholics, but mainly like A-class drug addicts. It's so common in the heartlands of the Muslim communities in the UK, Birmingham, London, Bradford, up north, down south, wherever it is, there's a large population of Muslims. Naturally, like any other community, we're going to have our own drug addicts. We're going to have our own junkies, wherever you want to put it, from our own families.
Yeah.
And I would say in nearly most cases, religion plays a leading role in their reformation. Nearly always, like when you meet some of the older brothers from the areas, and you meet them in whichever town or city, big beard, praying, religious, and religion plays a huge role in how they eventually gave up whatever substance or vice they were addicted to. What's the higher power you're talking about? Like in terms of a recovery, what is the higher power?
Like, so in recovery circles, they don't put pressure on you to be like, you know, it's not the God of my religion that I grew up, because I was raised a Catholic, right? It's not any one God, but it's your conception of a higher power. And for me, my higher power is effectively like the stillness that I would have inside of myself when I meditate. Occasionally, if I'm out walking around and I can hear the birds singing and I can see the trees, a lot of the time when I'm with my young kids, because they bring you right into the moment, it's just a peacefulness that it feels like it's coming from a place beyond the real world, and it's ultimate good, and it wants me to do what's right for me and my family, as opposed to my own base desires to get wrecked or to hurt other people or whatever. And it's just my conception of God, really. It's very hard to kind of explain or conceptualize, but I just do know that when I was at the jumping off point, which is what they call it in the recovery book, and I felt like I didn't want to live anymore, and I felt like there's no way I can get out of this obsession with alcohol. I have all this trauma. Drugs are a part of it too, but primarily alcohol. I felt like I couldn't stop drinking, and I would never be able to stop drinking. Something greater than myself seemed to intervene in my life, and suddenly I had a path towards living in accordance with this power and not me. So I feel like, and I was talking to a friend of mine who's like new in recovery at the moment, it just feels like there's someone else is managing my life. There's a manager in my life. And so I get up in the morning and I hand over my life and my day and my kids and my prospects and my self-obsession to this manager and say, I can't deal with all this on my own. Like, can you help me out here? And instead of like actually maybe handing it over, I think turning it over is a better way of conceiving it, that together we'll do it. I don't really know what it is, and I don't know how it works on some levels, but all I know is that since I parked my self-obsession and handed over to a power greater than myself, I'm in good form. I can do things like this, and most importantly, I can be useful. I tend to be like reasonably useful these days. When I was drinking, the only use I was to me and my friends who were getting drugged and getting drunk, to be honest.
I think it's quite easily explainable. What you described there is what we would call fitrah. Fitrah is, well, in the Islamic tradition, we call it the innate intuition.
Yeah.
Meaning humans are inclined towards three things. This is what we believe. If you're hungry, you will
eat.
If you're cold, you will
get warm.
And we all have the third instinct, which is a reverence instinct. There is something we all seek that is greater than us.
Yeah.
Many of us, in our crazy days, made our own whims and desires God.
Yes.
Yeah, your base desires becomes what dictates the higher power.
Yeah.
You make yourself the higher power.
Yes.
And, you know, you abuse your bodies, you engage in substance abuse, bad behaviors, all types of mad shit you get up to.
Yeah.
And that's because you made yourself God at that point. So the seeking of the higher power is something which all human beings have. That's what we believe.
Yeah.
There's always a sense of greater. If you're not looking up to yourself, you're looking up to someone who's a role model of yours, some superstar that you know follow religiously, or a god or a cult or whatever it is.
Yes.
But humans always seek something greater. I think that's an awareness of our own limitations.
Yes, and I think a bit of peace as well. I always felt like I was a bit disturbed inside, and I didn't know what it was. You know, like call it whatever you want, trauma, self-obsession. Why am I here? What am I doing this? And since I have a higher power, I suppose, running my show, there's just a load of peace has come in. And then when peace comes in, you can do a lot. You know, you can be useful. What
piece of advice would you give to anyone watching who's struggling with substance addiction, whether it's A-class drugs or alcohol? What one piece of advice could you give to them?
Just be aware that whatever is going on in your body and mind right now is a temporary state. You know, so I felt when I was in the height of my addiction, my thoughts were telling me, you're never going to get out of this. You might as well keep going because you're going to die ultimately anyway. So you might as well just go out on a high, literally. They are thoughts in your head, and there's another path, and it involves letting a power greater than yourself into your life can bring you from that level of pain and hopelessness and torture into a level of peace that I have right now. And I know it's possible because I'm living proof of it. I also thought that I was never going to get out of it. And today I don't even think about a drink. If I thought about a drink or a drug once in the blue moon, it would be just to reflect on how I can help other people. I don't have a single compulsion today. And I haven't for about, I'd say, 10 years.
So the last kind of itch was 10 years ago.
I'd say so, yeah. The first year was tough. But again, that's because the anxiety and the uncomfortableness was only unbearable, really, for that length of time. Once I started to see, oh, hold on, there's an alternative here, there's a solution here, then I was all about it, you know.
Big up to you, Ty, man. This is really inspiring, bro.
Thank you.
Circling back and ending with what we kind of began with, and that was fatherhood. How sobering is fatherhood?
Well, a problem for people who have addiction issues, and I think most people, is self-obsession. And the one beautiful thing about having two small kids is that you literally don't have a moment to think about what it is you need to do. Or like the thing I almost find toughest is like not getting back to people on time, because you know yourself when you're just like, there's kids around, you're just like, no, they're not getting back, you're not getting back to them. But just so beautiful to be, I just feel grateful to be alive, you know, and it's important to me as well to be there for my kids and to bring them up with a perspective on life that's about, it's not just about us in our little house here in Ireland, it's about fellowship and solidarity with substance for other people who are going through tough times. So my 2.5-year-old is already saying free Palestine and waving flags and stuff, and it just fills my heart, like, you know. And
your older child, you're still in touch and have...
Oh, of course, yeah. We're like great buddies now these days.
And have they vibed with their two younger siblings?
Totally, yeah. Quiva is her name. Big shout out for Quiva, yeah. Yeah, she loves it. And it's funny, I tried to influence Quiva as the years were going on to be like, have my politics, my views, whatever. And like, she was always resistant because it's like my dad is telling me to do something. And then when I gave up, she's actually come around to a lot of my way of thinking anyway. So I think there's a lesson in that as well, to just like let kids be kids. They'll find their own way. Like, don't try and force it on them.
What's next? Any big collabs? I know asking a cancelled man and someone who's heavily censored, what's next isn't exactly, you know, you're not going to have like a list of things, but anything coming up? Yeah, no, there's loads of things. I'm tipping away and I'm trying to do stuff in the real world as well. I might try and write a show about the experiences on the flotilla, and I have somebody who knows what they're talking about is helping me out with that. And as I say, even though I'm cancelled from a lot of my own pages, I have Now Media is a new page that we're running, and I'm trying to do some interviews with people there that are political but also have a little bit of a lighter feel to it. Like, I'm going to try and do some of the stuff that you are doing so wonderfully well, try and put my own spin in it, that like there's a kind of a lighter element that I can get to maybe sometimes with things. So if you can't find me, look out for @NotOnOurWatch. Wicked. Ty, it was an absolute pleasure having you on. Pleasure as always. Always good catching up, bro. Thank you. And I wish you all the best in all your endeavours. Whilst I admire your tweets from across the sea, mate. Brothers, sisters, friends, I hope you all enjoyed today's episode as much as I did. Do remember you can find this show and all 4 seasons on all the major audio platforms. And if you're tuning in via YouTube, don't be cheeky. Do remember to click subscribe to the 5 Pillars YouTube channel. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.